My sister, Kayla, vanished without a trace on a quiet Tuesday evening, and when I finally found her, she wasn't the same person. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. That's the part that still wakes me up at night, the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger. I'm not talking about someone who just wandered off or ran away or had a breakdown. I'm talking about someone being taken from you, and when you finally get them back, you realize pieces of them never made it home. My name is Alina. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how my little sister disappeared right in front of me, even though I didn't see it happen. We were close, like really close. She was 5 years younger than me. Her name's Kayla. Bright blue eyes, the kind of laugh that made other people smile without even knowing why. She was the type to rescue injured birds, bake muffins at midnight, dance in the kitchen while brushing her teeth. She wasn't just my sister, she was my best friend. When she moved back in with me, I thought it was just temporary. She had just gone through a messy breakup with some guy she didn't talk much about, and she needed a soft place to land. I had a 2-bedroom apartment in Chicago. I told her to take the spare room. No questions asked. The first week felt like old times, watching trash TV, ordering way too much takeout, laughing about stuff that only made sense to us. But then I started to notice things. She stopped laughing as much. She'd stay in her room for hours with the door closed. Sometimes I'd find her sitting at the window in the middle of the night, just staring. She said she was fine. Always fine. But there was this shadow in her eyes, like she was drifting away, inch by inch. I remember the last time I saw her clearly. She was standing by the front door, lacing up her boots. I asked where she was going, and she just smiled and said, "Just out for a walk, I need some air." I offered to go with her, but she shook her head. "I'm okay, Al. I'll be back in an hour." She never came back. At first, I didn't panic. It wasn't like her, but I figured she ran into someone she knew, lost track of time. But then an hour turned into 3. Then the sun started to set. I called her. No answer. Texted. Nothing. By midnight, I was calling hospitals, then the police. They told me not to worry. "She's an adult," they said. "She probably just needed space." But I knew something was wrong. Kayla didn't just disappear. When I walked into her room the next morning, everything was exactly where she left it. Her purse, her phone, her favorite hoodie draped across the bed like she'd be right back, like she was still here, only she wasn't. Over the next few days, things unraveled fast. The police filed a missing person report, but they didn't prioritize it. No signs of struggle, no leads, no witnesses. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything in my head. Was there something I missed? A sign? A warning? Did I say the wrong thing? Not ask the right question? That's the thing about trauma. It doesn't knock on your door. It slips in, quietly, while you're busy making dinner, folding laundry, laughing with someone you love. One day, your life is fine. The next, you're printing missing posters with your sister's face on them. Kayla wasn't just missing. She was gone. And no one could tell me why. But I was going to find out, even if it meant losing myself in the process. Before everything fell apart, life was actually okay. Not perfect, but manageable. I had a job that paid the bills, a small but cozy apartment in the Ravenswood neighborhood of Chicago, and a predictable routine. Wake up, coffee, code for 9 hours, gym if I had the energy, then collapse into Netflix or a book I wouldn't finish. Safe, structured. That was my life. Kayla, on the other hand, was chaos in the best and worst ways. She was the wind to my concrete, the kind of person who would dye her hair pink at 3 a.m. because she needed to feel something new. She lived moment to moment, always feeling everything too deeply, too fully, as if she hadn't yet learned how to protect herself from the world. We were raised mostly by our grandmother in upstate Michigan. Our mom wasn't really around. Mental health issues, bad choices in men, the usual sad story. And our dad dipped out when Kyla was 2. So we leaned on each other. She was 5 when she started crawling into my bed during thunderstorms, whispering that the lightning was trying to talk to her. She'd say, "Don't worry, Alina, I'll protect you." That was Kayla, terrified but fearless at the same time. When she called me one night sobbing, I didn't ask for details. I just said, "Come here. Stay as long as you need." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I don't know what to do anymore." 2 days later, she showed up with a suitcase, tear-streaked face, and a box of old paintings she hadn't touched in over a year. That was 2 months before she vanished. At first, having her there was comforting, like we were getting a second chance at something we missed the first time around. I'd make coffee, she'd blast Fleetwood Mac in the kitchen. We'd stay up late and talk about everything, mostly memories, not the present. She was careful with the now. She'd give vague answers about her ex, never mentioning his name, just little fragments. He hated when I wore makeup, or he didn't like me seeing my friends. At first, I thought she was just heartbroken, but there was something else beneath it, something darker. One night, I walked into her room to grab a charger and found her sketch pad open on the bed. She'd drawn a woman with a cracked face and hollow eyes wrapped in chains that looked like thorned vines. I picked it up, studying the tiny details. She'd scribbled something in the corner. "Freedom is forgetting who you were." I asked her about it later, and she just shrugged. "It's just art, Alina. Don't read into it." But I did read into it, because I was starting to feel like I didn't know who she was anymore, and I hated that feeling. The worst part is, I didn't push hard enough. I didn't want to scare her off or seem like I was smothering her. In hindsight, I think she was trying to tell me something. Not with words. Kayla was never great at direct confrontation, but through moments, through pauses, through the way she'd flinch when her phone buzzed, or how she'd double-check that the front door was locked 3 times before bed. There were cracks forming, but I chalked it up to anxiety, stress, trauma. I told myself she'd be okay eventually, that I was doing the right thing by giving her space. But maybe space was the wrong medicine. Maybe what she needed was someone to see her. We had one real argument a few days before she disappeared. It was small, stupid even. I asked her to let me know if she was going to be out late. She snapped, saying, "I'm not a child, Alina. Stop treating me like one." Her eyes were wild with something I couldn't name. Fear, anger, maybe both. I raised my hands and backed off. But that moment stayed with me. I keep thinking, what if that was the last chance I had to say something that mattered? To reach her before whatever or whoever took her did. Because when she walked out the door that Tuesday night, there was something final about the way she said goodbye. She didn't hug me. She didn't even look back, and I haven't stopped wondering why. The first 12 hours after Kayla didn't come home, I told myself to stay calm. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she just wanted to be alone, to breathe for a while, to clear her head. She used to do that sometimes, take long walks to the lake and come back with a bunch of rocks in her pockets, talking about how skipping stones made her feel like a kid again. But by hour 14, something in my gut twisted. I called her phone again, straight to voicemail. I checked her room. Her purse was still on the chair. Her phone, dead, on the kitchen counter. The same hoodie she always wore was crumpled on the couch. And her shoes? Still by the door. That's when I knew. She didn't take anything with her. She hadn't planned to leave. I filed a missing persons report that night. The police were polite, sympathetic even. But I could tell what they were thinking. She was an adult, 23. No signs of foul play. Maybe she just walked away. People do it all the time. But Kayla wasn't just people. She was my sister. And I knew her. She wouldn't vanish like this, not without telling me, not without a sign. The next few weeks were a blur of search parties, phone calls, and unanswered emails. I made flyers and taped them on every streetlight from Andersonville to Edgewater. I plastered her face all over Facebook and Reddit, begging for tips. Anything. Just a clue. The hardest part was the silence. People stopped reaching out after a while. Friends who brought casseroles in the beginning eventually stopped calling. My job gave me time off, but I didn't care. I'd already checked out. My days became a loop. Wake up, search, cry, sleep, repeat. And the nights were worse. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking of all the times I told her I'd always protect her. And now I couldn't even find her. I started dreaming of her. Not the real Kayla, but a twisted version. In one dream, she was trapped behind a wall of glass, screaming my name, but I couldn't hear her. In another, she was walking into a lake, eyes wide, mouth closed, like she'd given up. I tried to ignore them, but then things started happening. One morning, I opened my front door and found a single white feather on the welcome mat. Nothing too strange. Maybe a bird lost it, But 2 days later, there were 3 feathers, arranged in a perfect triangle, then a candle, then a tiny wooden charm with a spiral carved into the center. I didn't tell the police. They already thought I was imagining things, but I started keeping them in a box, just in case. I knew it sounded crazy, but I started to wonder, what if someone was trying to say something? What if Kyla wasn't missing by accident? That's when I found the journal. It was stuffed in the back of her closet, wedged behind an old shoebox, a slim black notebook with pressed flowers inside, and the word unlearn scratched on the cover. Most of the entries were poems, strange, disjointed, full of metaphors and symbols I didn't recognize, but a few were clearer. Mentions of someone named the Mother. Phrases like, healing doesn't always look kind, and to be free, I must be forgotten. It wasn't just heartbreak she'd been dealing with. It was something deeper, something dangerous. I went to the police with the journal. They skimmed it, made notes, but nothing came of it. No new leads, no urgency, just more waiting. I stopped sleeping entirely. I joined online forums, places where people talked about missing loved ones, cults, coercion, manipulation. That's when the pieces started clicking. Came across other stories, similar phrases, similar symbols, groups that lured in emotionally vulnerable people under the guise of healing and rebirth. That's when I started to believe it. Kayla hadn't just left. She'd been taken, not in the way people think of kidnapping. No vans, no force, something more subtle, more insidious. And the worst part? I think she let it happen. It was a Thursday morning when everything shifted. I was going through my usual routine, sitting on the floor surrounded by maps, notes, old receipts, printouts from online forums, when a plain white envelope slid through the mail slot. No stamp, no return address. Just my name on the front in black ink. My stomach flipped. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph. Kayla. Alive. Or at least, breathing. She was sitting on what looked like a wooden bench. Her hands were folded in her lap, but there were bruises on her arms, dark smudges that made my heart seize. Her hair was longer, messier. Her eyes, they weren't right. There was no light in them, no spark. Behind her, barely visible, was a stone fireplace and wooden walls. A cabin, maybe. The light in the photo was dim, like it had been taken in the early evening. A shadow crept over half her face. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking past it. I turned the photo over. There was a small postmark, barely legible, something in rural West Virginia. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and my duffel bag. I threw in clothes, snacks, a flashlight, chargers, my pepper spray, and a knife from the kitchen. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend, Jenna. I knew what they'd say. Call the police. Let the professionals handle it. But the police had already let Kayla go once. I wasn't giving them another chance. Before I left, I sat on the couch holding that photo, tears burning in my eyes. My fingers traced her face like maybe I could reach through the paper and pull her out of whatever hell she was in. That was the moment I made the decision. I wasn't just looking for my sister anymore. I was going to bring her home, even if it broke me. The drive took 12 hours. I barely stopped. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel. I played the photo over and over in my mind, like a movie still, trying to memorize every detail. The pattern on the blanket draped behind her, the shape of the stones in the fireplace. A reflection in the window that looked like trees, dense ones. Pine, maybe. I made it to a small town outside the area on the postmark. Population under 1,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and strangers stick out like bruises. I checked into a rundown roadside motel. Faded wallpaper, a buzzing fridge, and a single lamp that flickered every few seconds. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound outside like it might be the last thing I'd ever hear. The next morning, I started asking questions. I showed people the photo, careful not to give away too much. Most shook their heads, told me they didn't recognize her. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman in a diner glanced at the picture, frowned, then walked away without a word. But then I went to the gas station. The clerk was an older man, maybe late 60s, with deep lines on his face and a permanent squint in his eyes. I handed him the photo while pretending to pay for water and trail mix. He looked at it for a long time. Too long. Then he said, almost under his breath. "You're not the first one to come around here looking for someone who didn't want to be found." I asked what he meant. He shook his head. "Some folks up in those woods think they've got a better way to live. They don't use phones, don't come into town. They recruit people who've been hurt, lost, offer them peace, a new name, a new life." My blood ran cold. "Do you know where they are?" He hesitated, then nodded toward the hills behind the town. "There's an old trail. Leads to an abandoned logging road. You go down that path. Be sure you want to see what's at the end of it." That night, I packed everything I had into my car and drove until I hit the trail. I parked, got out, and stared into the thick line of trees ahead of me. I could feel it. She was out there, and I wasn't leaving without her. I didn't think much of it at first, just a knock at the door and the sound of paper sliding across the floor. Another bill, maybe, but when I picked it up and saw my name handwritten on the envelope, everything inside me stilled. No stamp, no return address, just my first name in bold capital letters, like someone had wanted it to be unmistakably clear. "This is for you." I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. Kayla. She was alive. Or at least, she looked alive. She was seated on what looked like a wooden bench, or maybe a low cot. Her body looked thinner, her skin paler than I remembered. Her hair was longer now, messier, a little wild. She wore a long beige dress that I'd never seen before, almost like something from another decade. And her arms, bruises dark and symmetrical like fingerprints, marred the softness of her skin. But her face, that's what broke me. Her expression was blank, not scared, not angry, not even sad. Just gone. There was no light in her eyes, no trace of the Koila I knew. She wasn't looking at the camera either. She was looking past it, almost like she didn't know or didn't care that someone was watching. I flipped the photo over. There was nothing on the back except a faint postmark from a rural area in West Virginia. No name, no message, just that single clue. And that was it. That was the moment everything inside me snapped into place. The fear, the grief, the sleepless nights. It all sharpened into one clear, irreversible thought. I was going to find her, and I wasn't waiting on anyone else to do it for me. The police had long since filed her case away under no new leads. My friends had stopped asking for updates. My job didn't expect me back anymore. It was like the world had already moved on from Kyla. But I hadn't. I couldn't. She was my sister. She'd come to me when she had nowhere else to go. I promised her safety. I told her she was safe with me, and I had failed. So I packed. A small duffel bag, essentials only. Clothes, water, snacks, first aid kit, flashlight, pepper spray, a hunting knife I'd never actually used, but somehow it made me feel stronger. I brought the photo, the journal, a phone with a full battery and no expectation of reception. I left a note on my kitchen table in case I didn't come back. Then I drove. West Virginia isn't that far from Chicago, not really. A little under 9 hours. But the drive felt longer than that. Time stretched out between gas stations and rest stops, the photo burning a hole in the passenger seat next to me. I kept glancing at it, searching for details I'd missed. The shape of the window, the shadows on the wall, the way her hands were folded like she was waiting for something or someone. When I finally reached the area from the postmark, it was smaller than I imagined. One diner, one gas station, a closed-up general store, and a church that looked like it had seen better decades. I started asking questions the way people do in missing persons documentaries. Softly, carefully, casually, showing the photo like maybe it was just a long-lost friend I was hoping to reconnect with. No one said much. Some looked confused, some looked away, but the gas station clerk, he froze. Old guy, weathered, face like he'd spent half his life squinting at the sun. When he looked at the photo, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition. Fear. He leaned in a little. "She don't go by that name no more," he said. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" He glanced around like someone might be listening. Folks up in those hills, they live different. They take people in, people who don't got no one, say they help them, fix what's broken. He looked at me hard, but not everyone who goes up there comes back the same, if they come back at all. That night, I sat in my motel room shaking, staring at the trailhead on the map he'd marked for me. A narrow logging road, leads into the woods, then disappears into nothing. He warned me, told me not to go alone. But I knew one thing for sure. Kyla was in those woods, and I wasn't leaving until I brought her home. The trail was barely a trail. It started as a dirt path through tall grass and thinning woods, then curved into something darker, denser. Trees gathered closer, branches arching overhead like ribs closing in. I followed it for hours, guided only by instinct and the gas station clerk's map, until I reached what looked like an old logging road, overgrown, forgotten, swallowed by nature. And yet still used. I could tell by the faint tire tracks and worn footprints half covered in leaves. My chest felt like it was being compressed from the inside out. Every part of me was screaming to turn around, but there was no turning back. I kept walking. Eventually, the trees opened up to a small clearing. That's when I saw it. The cabin. It looked just like the one in the photo. Weathered wood, a tin roof streaked with rust, a broken porch light hanging by a single wire, a single smoke trail curled from the chimney into the gray sky. I crouched low behind a tree, watching, listening. Then the door creaked open, and there she was, Kayla. She stepped out onto the porch barefoot, wearing the same beige dress from the photograph. Her hair was longer now, tangled. She moved slowly like she was walking underwater, but it was her. My sister. I almost called out, almost, but something held me back, because behind her a woman followed, mid-50s maybe, long silver braid, loose linen clothes, bare feet, calm face. She moved like she owned the earth beneath her. Kayla called her mother. I couldn't hear every word, but I watched Kayla hand her something, what looked like a necklace. Then she knelt, just like that, head bowed, obedient. It shattered me. This wasn't just someone who'd been taken. This was someone who had been rewritten. I waited until nightfall. When the lights in the cabin dimmed and the forest around me went still, I crept closer. My hands were sweating. My heart was hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Through the window, I saw them. 6 people, 4 women, 2 men sitting in a circle. The woman they called Mother stood in the center, eyes closed, chanting something I couldn't understand. Kayla sat among them, her hands resting on her knees. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. I pressed record on my phone. It was like watching a ritual. Not violent, not loud, but eerie in its stillness. They repeated her words like scripture. Phrases that echoed things from Kayla's journal. Unlearn your pain. Release the name given to you in captivity. Pain is the poison of the old world. Then Mother walked over to Kayla. She knelt and held her face in both hands. You are free now, Lyra, she whispered. Lyra, not Kayla. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know if she had been brainwashed, manipulated, or if she'd chosen this life to escape the wreckage of her past. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. She wasn't safe, she wasn't free, and she wasn't staying. I waited until most of them had gone to sleep. I circled to the back of the cabin and found a small window I could slide open. Quietly, carefully. Every sound felt like thunder in the silence. Kayla was alone in a back room, sitting cross-legged on a mat, facing a wall covered in drawings and feathers and bones. I stepped inside. She didn't hear me. I whispered, Kayla. She turned slowly. For a second, less than that, I saw her. The real her, flickering behind tired eyes. Then it vanished. You can't be here, she whispered. You're not supposed to be here. I stepped forward, my voice cracking. You don't have to stay. I'm here to take you home. Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't move. She said you wouldn't come, she murmured. Then she was wrong. I reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. We moved fast. I guided her out the back window, through the trees, down the logging road, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would wake the forest. We didn't stop until the car was in sight. Then Kayla collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard her body shook. She kept repeating the same words. I didn't know how to come back. I held her tighter. You didn't have to, I said. I came to get you. It's been 6 months since I found Kayla. Some days it feels like it all happened yesterday. Other days it feels like it happened to someone else entirely, like I watched it in a movie or read about it in a stranger's journal, but I have the scars. We both do. The drive home from West Virginia was almost silent. Kayla curled up in the passenger seat, her face turned toward the window, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. I didn't press her with questions. I just drove. Every once in a while, I'd glance over to make sure she was still there. I think I needed that reassurance more than she did. When we got back to Chicago, she didn't want to go back to my apartment. "I can't be in that space again," she said, her voice hoarse. So we found a small Airbnb out near the lake. Quiet, cozy, safe. It had big windows, soft pillows, and plants on every windowsill. She needed light. She needed air. And I needed her to feel like she could breathe again. The first few weeks were hard. She barely ate. She didn't sleep. Some nights she'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, her hands gripping the sheets like she was still trying to escape. I'd sit on the floor beside her bed, reading from old poetry books until her breathing slowed. But slowly, she began to come back to me. She started therapy with someone who specialized in trauma and coercive groups. Someone who didn't ask why she stayed, but instead helped her understand how it happened. There's a difference, and that difference saved her. She told me bits and pieces when she was ready. The group had found her online, through a self-help forum where she'd posted anonymously after her breakup. They'd offered comfort, language that felt healing. They told her she was special, that her pain meant she was meant for more, that she'd been chosen. It didn't start with control, it started with kindness. And then they took everything she was and told her it was poison. Told her that Kyla was a damaged name, that Alina was a weight she needed to cut loose to truly be free. And for a while, she believed them. That's the part that gutted me. Not that she left, but that she thought I was part of the thing she had to escape. We had long talks, hard talks. I told her I was angry, not at her, but at myself, for not seeing the signs, for not doing more, for waiting too long to fight. She cried, I cried. We broke down and rebuilt more times than I can count. But one morning, I woke up and found her in the kitchen, making pancakes. She had her earbuds in, music playing, and she was humming along. It wasn't a big moment, nothing dramatic, but I just stood there in the hallway watching her move, alive, present, herself. And I realized we were going to be okay. Kayla started painting again. Her new work is darker, bolder, more honest than anything she ever made before. One piece in particular, my favorite, is a woman walking barefoot through fire. She's holding a broken chain in one hand and reaching back with the other. Kayla told me, "That one's about you." She's not the same person she was before, neither am I. People like to talk about happy endings, but this wasn't one. Not really. There's no ribbon, no perfect bow, but what we have now is real, it's raw, and it's ours. We still get scared sometimes. When the doorbell rings unexpectedly, when someone stares too long, when she wakes up crying from dreams she can't explain, but we face it, together. I started writing again, sharing our story anonymously online. At first it was just therapy, a way to process, but then people started reaching out, strangers, survivors, people who saw pieces of themselves in Kayla's journey, people who said, "I thought I was crazy, but now I know I'm not alone." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about finding Kayla. It was about reminding her who she was and helping her find her way back home. Sometimes rescue doesn't look like sirens or headlines. Sometimes it's just a sister knocking quietly on the door you've been too scared to open and refusing to leave. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, for feeling this with me, for remembering Kayla. Sharing this story wasn't easy, but I believe stories like hers, like ours, matter. Because silence is where these things grow. And the more we talk about it, the more light we bring into the dark. If this video moved you or made you think of someone you love, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, whatever you feel called to say. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories like this, raw, real, and told from the heart, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. Thank you for being part of this. Truly, I'll see you in the next story.